Greetings. So here's a quick hypothesis which I'd like to propose. The infamous sock puppet called Richard Katz, Ph.D. with a capital H, which was purported to be a Tel Aviv-based Hebrew professor, was actually created on the 3rd of December 2020, which is to say, on this day, 1 year ago. Now, that immediately raises a question. Why do I think that's likely the case? Well, consider a couple of pieces of evidence in favor of that hypothesis. First, note that the cat sock puppet was trotted out in response to the revelation that Pastor Majors of the Boom Church had misrepresented the scholar David Bunis, the actual flesh and blood scholar David Bunis, and the first video which revealed that some of that misrepresentation dropped on December 3rd. Moreover, when Bunis sent out an email to both me and Pastor Majors making explicitly clear that he was misrepresented, that email was sent out on December 3rd, more specifically at 11:50 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember that date and time. Okay. Now, because that's going to come up in a second. Now, moreover, when Will Brown started hinting that he actually had a second scholar, he wasn't relying just on Bunis, his posts, his YouTube community posts, which alluded to such, started dropping on December 3rd. Like, for example, he took this post down, but this is from a screenshot that's still on Facebook. And the Facebook post was posted on the evening of December 4th at a point when the relevant YouTube community post from our friends over at the Boom Church was 22 hours old. Therefore, the community post was put up on December 3rd. And beyond that, when Kelly Richardson showed the email correspondence between Brown and the cat sock puppet, the timestamp on the correspondence began on December 3rd. More specifically, the first email was sent at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, less than 2 hours after Bunis sent out his email explicitly stating that he was misrepresented. So I would propose that today is likely the first birthday of the cat sock puppet. Now, admittedly, I can't prove that definitively, but today does seem like the most likely candidate for the date of the creation of the cat sock puppet. Therefore, this seems like an auspicious time to do a sort of year in review and discuss some of the perhaps lesser known high points and low points of the controversy over the last year. First, as many know, the Berean TV channel tried to explore the controversy fairly when it first started. Unfortunately, supporters of Will Brown tried to circle the wagons and encourage people to unsubscribe from Berean's channel. They sort of maligned Berean's character. Brown himself at that time was explicitly declaring that everyone, quote, must stand together as a nation, end quote, in reaction to the controversy. Now, that was an obvious bit of emotional manipulation where he was trying to convince other Israelites that this controversy, which honestly really only impacted him and maybe Kelly Richardson, so at most the controversy impacted two people, he was trying to convince Israelites that this controversy was somehow an attack on the entire Israelite spectrum, which is why he was calling on people to, quote-unquote, stand together as a nation against, the revelation that they trotted out a made-up scholar. Sadly, many were taken in by that manipulation. And however, the following July, the Issachar channel took a fresh look at the controversy in a video titled, quote, a playbook that plays with the truth, end quote. Now, in that video from July allowed some people to revisit the subject and reconsider the evidence, right? And some of the comments on that video showed that Issachar had helped some people break free from that, aforementioned emotional manipulation. I'd like to read a couple of those comments. One person wrote the following, quote, when all this stuff was going down at the end of last year with the Pews and with the urban apologist, I was also following the crowd, and it was the actual drama of it all that made me fall back from all parties involved, because honestly, they were talking in a circle and none of it was edifying. The Pews was the final straw. And instead of people speaking up about the inconsistencies of the email and actual findings and existence of Richard Katz, people, like you said, Unc, began to back off the topic and started talking about other things they began to proclaim how it didn't matter if Kelly or Brown were lying or not because the Pews don't validate our heritage. To this day, they refuse to show who Katz is and how he came to his conclusion. I'm sorry, but if they walk in the Messiah, why are they scared to reveal the truth? We don't walk in fear, we walk in truth and light, not darkness. I actually watched the video in the description when it first came out, and when Kelly did his rebuttal, I only was more confused, but I let it slide because they were beefing with the UA and Abu, and I had witnessed racism coming from the UA, so I thought Abu was trying to discredit Kelly and Brown. But revisiting this all these months later, I can no longer ride for this foolishness. I agree, the Pews don't validate who I am, and it's a shame that this turned into a smear campaign rather than Kelly or Brown answering the questions and being transparent with their findings. Instead, they slander and keep their findings and their so-called professor in the dark, and we are just supposed to literally take their word for it. I Googled Richard Katz months ago, and all I found was the guy in Georgia who doesn't study the Hebrew language. People at the time kept saying that all you got to do is Google search, but that is a lie. Bro Berean was trying to bring this to the light back then, but because he was cool with Abu and the UA, we dismissed it and thought of it as more of as an attack than a wake-up call. I know this was long, but thank you, Unc Dwayne, for revisiting this. I almost forgot about it because I had stopped following Kelly and Brown because the Richard Katz thing didn't sit right with me. End quote. And then I'd like to read just one more comment, a shorter comment, a second comment, which reads as follows. Quote, thank you, Brother Dwayne, for this video. I was convicted by this video. I, too, although just a spectator, was quickly drawn into all the drama that Richard, Kelly, and the Pews came with. I unsubscribed from channels only to see that Kelly and William both have created unstable patterns that made me question their motives. When I see the Pew issue... When I've seen this Pew issue come back up and actually listened from a neutral position, I agree with you. I owe Brother Berean TV an apology because he was the first to touch this sensitive subject and they all dragged him, and I followed the crowd. Later on, I grew extremely tired of the crying Kelly has done numerous times on various platforms, all about himself, and William was recently promoted to bishop, which made me highly skeptical. There is nothing you mentioned here that I disagree with. Thank you for bringing light to this, end quote. So, I want to say thank you very much to Issachar for revisiting the subject because he, as I said, he allowed people to get past the emotional manipulation which was used to blind people to the reality of this fiasco. But moving on from that, more recently, Orthodox Moor has been very explicit about the fact that the Katz is fake, you know. To his credit, now, you know, I have to say that Orthodox Moor has been skeptical the entire time, and he's made his skepticism clear for the entirety of the past year. But he went out of his way during that time. He went out of his way to try to be as fair as possible to William Brown and Brown supporters. However, unfortunately, as recently as last month, that crowd, was still invoking the Katz controversy as some sort of a justification for introducing still more secret scholars. You see, they had concocted a fictional narrative about the Katz sock puppet being harassed, and they used that fiction to justify the introduction of multiple secret scholars on the grounds that they can't reveal those scholars' identities for fear of exposing them to the same alleged harassment which they allege befell the Katz sock puppet. And so, as they were even using this sort of argument in their disagreements with Orthodox Moor, they pretty much forced his hand in terms of, speaking out on the reality of the Katz controversy. So here's what Orthodox Moor had to say just last month in response to people who are continuing to use the Katz sock puppet as a justification for bringing up secret scholars.
And definitely no secret scholars. We all still got a bad taste in our mouth over that whole Richard Katz stuff. That was a bad look for the whole community. Because Richard Katz is obviously not real. And it was obviously a fabrication at this juncture. There's no two ways about it. And we as a community are owed an apology for that whole thing because we all had to wear that. And the brothers involved don't want to touch the topic with a 10-foot pole anymore. Won't return communications behind closed doors to have conversations that they've already agreed to have. And if you address it publicly, they want to start a campaign against you, much like what's going on here, to where it's got to be gaslighting, and we're not dealing with the facts on the matter. Now check this out. I can say the Katz is fake, and ain't no one gonna come at me, right?
And then, the very next day, Orthodox Moor briefly visited the subject again in a discussion with Sister E. So as you listen to this clip, note how Sister E says that she herself was quite mad about the Katz controversy. Unfortunately, she has yet to elaborate on her true feelings, that what she felt during that controversy. But I must confess, I'd love to know what precisely Sister E was mad about. I would love to correspond with her or talk with her about this subject. I'd love to hear her read her true thoughts on the controversy. And I want to put emphasis on her thoughts, right? With all due respect, I'm not interested in a sort of dismissive, hand-waving declaration of, quote, go discuss that with Pastor Majors, end quote. You know, look, of course, it would be great if Brown actually addressed the subject, but it doesn't seem like he's going to do so. And more importantly, as with regards to what we're talking about now, Brown can't speak on Sister E's thoughts, right? He can't say what she was feeling. And I'm interested in hearing or reading her thoughts, what she actually felt as the controversy unfolded, right? But whatever the case, here's the clip of Orthodox Moor and Sister E briefly discussing this controversy last month, a couple of weeks ago.
I sat through the whole Richard Katz thing, and that was horrible for our community, sis. I'm not doing that again. We all wore egg on our face for that one, right? So that's what I'm saying. I'm not letting, hold on, real quick, hold on. So I'm not letting people run amok in the public anymore and act like, no, it's not going to get checked. It's fun to get checked, sis. And again,
I'm gonna get ready to do some private where all of us can talk, because we got to iron these differences out, especially with the cats. I'm not the cats thing pissed me off more than anybody, and I think that needs to be addressed as well.
Right, because the same situation is happening. Like, so if I try to, like, if people, not me, ain't no one coming at me crazy. So if people try to address the cats thing, they're gonna go, oh, well, you're supporting Abu and blah blah blah. That's why I said, check this out. If Abu's the bad guy, I'm way worse than Abu, because I took harder stances than Abu took, and I'm going to continue to, because this is my community. You feel what I'm saying? We need to be held accountable. We need to hold each other accountable.
And of course, let me say that I thank Orthodox Moor for being consistently fair on this subject, and I thank him for being so candid over the course of the last month. I also thank Sister E for, at least for that moment, sharing that she herself felt a certain anger about the Katz controversy. Moving on from that, it's also worth noting that just this week, our good friend Dante Fortson came out and publicly stated that Katz was not real. Now, to Dante's credit, he was actually saying the same thing in private behind the scenes for quite some time. He told Berean pretty matter-of-factly in private behind the scenes that, that he knew that, the cat sock puppet wasn't real, that this was all a lie, right? But as far as I know, this is the first public statement from Dante, not somebody else leaking it. This is him himself putting it in public on Facebook, at least that I'm aware of, right? So to give some context to the comment on your screen, our good friend TEOTW has been arguing, now this is somewhat separate from the Katz controversy, but TEOTW has been arguing that a position I take on the existence of dark-skinned Jews contradicts a position that Faithful to God has taken. So part of the argument that was going on was that if I'm not more vocal about this alleged disagreement with Faithful to God, then that shows a lack of integrity or accountability on my part, right? So in the midst of that discussion, Orthodox Moor was encouraging TEOTW to keep pressing us, keep pressing me, keep pressing, Faithful to God, keep pressing anyone else on the issue of accountability. But then Orthodox Moor said that likewise, they should also hold other Israelites accountable. And he brought up the Katz fiasco as an example of where there might be a lack of accountability amongst Israelites, right? So the comment on your screen, if you're interested in that subject, I'm sure TEOTW, who's always welcome to comment here, can elaborate, and you can also visit his page and I'll post links in the video description. But the controversy aside, the comment on your screen from our good friend Dante was responding to that. He was responding to Orthodox Moor saying, like, let's hold everybody accountable. Let's hold Abu accountable. Let's hold Faithful accountable. And let's also hold the people who push that Katz nonsense accountable, right? And so Dante was responding to that, right? And so here's what Dante wrote. I'm, focusing on the highlighted portions, which are most relevant to this video. Dante wrote at one point, quote, "The only people riding with that Katz nonsense are those that defended it to begin with," end quote.
Shots fired, Dante.
Then he went on to say, quote, "The Katz thing is BS, and we all have already agreed to that," end quote. Let me just say up front that I really appreciate these public comments from our good friend Dante Fortson. As has been said before, I'd like to say it again now. Shout out to Dante. And, as for people who unlike Dante, tried to defend the Katz shenanigans, I'm sorry to say that Benayah Israel was among them. The Facebook post on your screen is from last July, and in it, Benayah repeats the false charge that people harassed the sock puppet and threatened the sock puppet's job. He even complains about Issachar revisiting the subject. Honestly, this post was a low point for Benayah, and the most charitable thing I can say is that I hope this was the result of him being sincerely deceived by others and not an instance of him trying to consciously defend deception. But that aside, I again want to express my sincere gratitude to Dante for being so honest. It was said around this time last year that Dante was giving out Christmas presents, and perhaps it could be said that as this comment was just in time for the first birthday of the cat sock puppet, this year he gave us all a Catsmas present. So, on that note, I'll close here. I'll close by wishing a happy first birthday to the cat sock puppet and wishing a very merry Catsmas to all who are watching. As always, I'm interested in the comments of others. God bless.